with the storm there in Kentucky. I just wanted to give you another update on what I've been working on recently. So as a first step towards understanding what this innovation is, with the goal of understanding what factors are important in its implementation, following this innovation implementation conceptual framework approach to understand what the components of are the innovation in question, that the global context strategy. Um, I've started reviewing a variety of different documents to do that, right? To understand what those components actually are. So in this process, I've looked at the following here: 8 IB documents that are kind of like core in describing the strategy. Some of them are general, some of them are program specific. Um, Looked at four specific IB implementation support documents, and 8 different papers on implementation research related to IB. Um, Also looked at, these were just conversations that I had had in the past, and am now reflecting on with curriculum developers, and then also drawing on conversations, informal conversations that I've had with people in the past to try and wrap my head around just what the components of this innovation are. Um, so basically, this is the framework that they provide for trying to break down in gray here. Sorry, um, in uh, in gray here, the innovation implementation conceptual framework divides innovation components into two broad categories: structural and interactional or instructional. And then the structural category is divided into procedural and educative elements. And so procedural are things like, how much time do you spend on it? What does your lesson plan look like, or that kind of thing, right? Educative are things that basically the instructor or the person, the user of the innovation, needs to know. So, for example, background information on content or skills, etc. Um, and then jumping over to the red side here, the interactional or instructional category is divided into two subcategories. One is pedagogical, and so these are basically what the user is expected to kind of do, right, in implementing the innovation. And then the other side of that is student engagement, and this is what the recipient, the students in this case, are expected to engage in, right? So, um, excuse me, the a nice example is, you could walk into a class and go through all of the steps that are maybe outlined pedagogically, but if students aren't responding and interacting or engaging in the way that's intended, then also the innovation is not going to be enacted or have the desired effect. So, what I've been doing now is going through these different sources, and what I did was basically do kind of like a keyword search and read through them to identify sections that were related to this specific innovation, right? The global context strategy, which is also sometimes referred to as contextualized learning or teaching and learning in context. And so what I've done is made basically a big, it's not a spreadsheet, but a Word document, and kind of coded and reviewed, or I'm in the process of reviewing this to pull out elements of the innovation and then categorize them with regards to each of these four areas, right? There's another, which would be, I guess, the next step, to look at the user group, right? So you could actually have things that are specific for whole school or for student, that kind of thing. But as a first step, I'm not finished at all with this, but this is some kind of early initial work identifying some of these components. Um, yeah, this is not finished, but there are some important things that are coming out of this. One, I guess, is that the pedagogical, well, the MYP, the middle years program, where this innovation kind of lives, is a curriculum framework. And so, unlike other curricula that maybe are more specified and lay out specific sequence of lessons or things like that, right? Topics. The MYP is a framework, so it doesn't actually specify details the same way some other highly specific curricula would, right? So one thing that I'm finding is that there's a lot of procedural, well, at a big level, a lot of kind of procedural components. There are a huge amount of educative components, and this is again, this is not finished. So you know the idea that teachers need to understand what contextualized learning is, how it relates to inquiry-based learning, and then if you go into international mindedness, which is definitely a connected goal, um, it's really big, and this is kind of a big nebulous term with lots of different interpretations, and I've just listed a couple of them here. Um, in terms of student engagement, there are more specific, maybe outcomes, right? Some of them are confounded by the fact that international mindedness is such a well, it's used in just so many different ways, and there are a lot of different terms that are used in different ways and different concepts. But essentially, this is a pretty good list here of kind of what students are meant to kind of take away from these experiences. Some ideas related to student inquiry as well, specific components of this innovation, and I've only gotten to two skills there. Um, but in terms of the specific actions, behaviors, and interactions expected of teachers, this is much fuzzier, grayer, not much less defined, and some of these things are, you know, almost like referring to general classroom practices. So, um, what I'm doing, continuing to do is work through this work through this bank of documents that have been pulled out, or sorry, the sections that are relevant to this innovation. I've copied and pasted or made notes in this table here, and continuing to pull out implementation specific components that are relevant to studying this. So the idea is that once you have these things defined, then you can start talking about whether or not they're in place and to what extent, how they're being enacted, and those kinds of things, rather than saying, oh, is the global context strategy being effectively implemented or implemented at all, or is it, is it at the sustained level of implementation? um, some of these things might be in place, and definitely what I would say is that kind of some of these structural procedural things are um, really well supported. And normally when people, unfortunately it seems, when people think about implementation, they're really thinking about like these procedural things. You might ask, oh, the school will show you their program plan for how they're covering or implementing this, or show you a unit plan, and that kind of thing, or tell you how much time is devoted to this process. Um, these elements are perhaps more, not perhaps, I would say for sure, these elements are much more measurable and much more kind of worried about by schools, and part of that might be due to the evaluation structures and things that are in place. Um, Much less, I would say, is in place in terms of the educative structural components. So, for example, if you were to ask a teacher, what is international mindedness, you get a wide variety, and no, like, kind of no fault to them, because there are many, many different definitions and elements of the definition, right? Um, and if you went over here to student engagement, that would probably be uh, pretty lacking, I would say, or at least much less studied, or much less kind of considered, right? So what the research that I'm doing, and the sources that I've read, and some of the studies and implementation suggest just that many of these structural aspects dominate our understanding of whether or not this particular program, and maybe many others, are actually being quote unquote implemented, right? where it's the student engagement outcomes and these pedagogical outcomes that are equally important, if not more, right? Um, so once this analysis or this set of critical components is established, that can inform, right, the development of instruments, those critical system factors, in a more meaningful way. Um, yeah, so yeah, I just wanted to share with you what I've been up to. I'd hoped to finish this today, but I have only on page 4 of about 50 pages of information taken from those, uh, let's say, like 20 different sources. At a good point, just have to kind of go through it, and the idea of understanding which of these components um, are critical. Some of them might be more or less critical. Some of them might kind of fall under broader categories. But that's kind of what I'm working on right now. So yeah, hope everything is okay out your way, and yeah, look forward to talking with you. Thanks. Bye.